So last month I put out a video on the top 10 80s slasher movies that you might not have seen, and you guys really seem to enjoy it, so I decided to do a volume 2. So here is another top 10 80s slasher movies you might not have seen. This is essentially a list of recommendations. These are slasher films that never got a sequel, never got a remake. I just think they're at least somewhat underseen, and in case you haven't checked them out, I think now's the time. So welcome again to the Cobwebs channel. My name is Daniel, and let's jump in at number 10 with Superstition from 1982. Now, at the beginning of this movie, like a lot of slasher films, you've got some dumb teenagers who just played a prank on some people, and now they're wandering through this abandoned house, and they get brutally murdered by some unseen force. And these are a couple of spectacular kills. One of them's head explodes in a microwave. The other one gets chopped in half by a window shutting down on him. That is a very sharp window. We then go into the actual story, which is about a minister who comes into this town to take over the church. This abandoned house is on church property, and the police want him to do something with his house because terrible things keep happening to teenagers there. As the movie goes, we start getting more and more backstory and discovering that a witch was executed on the grounds of this house, and now she is haunting it and killing anybody who may come onto the premises, including a family that has just moved into the house. Now, for this whole list, this is definitively ranked at number 10. I absolutely think all the other movies I'm going to talk about are better than Superstition, but I like this movie because the great things about it just stand out so much. The kills are great. This is actually one of the video nasties, one of the movies that got banned in England, and I just love the fact that this is a supernatural slasher movie where the killer is this ghost witch, and the third act of the film is so spectacular. You're just in a haunted house slasher heaven as this monstrous figure that you can kind of see on here with these black clawed hands is coming at people. It's so cool. But on a character level, the movie is very lacking. There's absolutely no one of much interest in this movie for you to really latch onto. The plot is slow moving. The second act really drags. Now, like I said, it starts on a bang, it ends with an even bigger bang, so you leave the theater happy, or you turn off this Blu-ray happy. But it's that second act where you start wondering, like, should I turn this off? But don't do it. Stick out to the end. At number 9, Night School.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
At number 9, Night School from 1981. Now, this is a police procedural slasher in which we follow a detective. They make a big deal about how he went to Harvard. He's this brainy detective, and he is trying to solve this string of murders that are happening to young women in Boston. And the investigation leads him to this all-girls school in which he starts paying close attention to a teacher there who is very clearly having multiple affairs with multiple of his female students. Now, the killer in this movie is pretty cool, all dressed up like a biker with a black biker helmet that completely shields the face. And I wouldn't say the kills in this movie are particularly spectacular. They're more focused on suspense, I think. And this is one of those movies where you're gonna like follow a woman, a character who you don't know at all, and follow her for a little while until she eventually gets murdered. Slasher movies are guilty of doing that kind of thing, and this one does it quite a few times. But I think this is of note because this is one of the more serious slashers, one that feels more geared towards adults with a bit more interesting, deeper character relationships and dynamics that are going on here. More grim, more realistic. And I do actually like this police detective who we're following through the movie, played by Leonard Mann. Probably the most notable actor in the movie is Rachel Ward as our female lead. If you're looking for like a really fun, good vibe slasher, this is probably not the one to go with, but for something that's got a little bit more on its mind and is a bit more grim and realistic, it's a good pick. But for number 8, let's go to the other side of the spectrum and just get fun and silly and talk about Killer Party from 1986. So this is a college April Fool's Day set slasher film about some girls who are trying to throw a party at an abandoned fraternity house where a pledge was guillotined in the past. And now it's possible that that pledge has returned from the dead to seek revenge. Now, when you mention Killer Party, the first thing that comes to mind about this movie is the very beginning. I love the beginning of this movie. It starts with 2 false openings where we're watching a scene and then it turns out that that's actually just a movie that the characters are watching at the drive-in screen, and then it's revealed that that drive-in scene is actually just part of a music video, and then we watch that entire music video from a band called White Sister doing the song called April You're No Fool. And I gotta say, if you like 80s rock music, which I do, that's a darn good song. and I was not upset watching this super fun music video with this good song with zombies running around a drive-in. It's so much fun. And then it's revealed our actual main character in the movie is watching that music video on TV. So it's a ridiculous way to open a movie, but the novelty of it and honestly the really fun way it's executed stands out to me. Now, this is just a fun, silly movie. It's got enjoyable characters to follow. I really, really like all of them. Beautiful college setting. It very much looks like fall, so I don't know why they say it's April Fool's. The setting doesn't really fit, but I do like the atmosphere of it. The kills are not good. They're mostly off screen. But when we get into the third act, there's some crazy supernatural stuff that comes out that I was not expecting and I thought was a lot of fun. At number 7, we've got Happy Birthday to Me from 1981. Fairly simple premise to this one. This is about a girl at a private school who's very proud to be a part of a very exclusive clique of the popular kids at this school. But one by one, each of these teenagers start getting brutally murdered, and she starts trying to find out who is responsible, and everything comes to a head at her 18th birthday party. Now, of all these movies, this is the new discovery for me. I actually just watched this movie for the first time, despite it being on my watch list for so long, and I'm really glad I watched it because the thing that really stands out about this movie, it's very well made. The actors are very capable. It's very well shot. It's directed by a very capable genre filmmaker, J. Lee Thompson, who made stuff like the original Cape Fear, several of the Planet of the Apes movies, 10 to Midnight, one of my favorite Charles Bronson movies. So he heads this movie up very, very well. The thing that works about this movie for me a little less is it's actually an hour and 50 minutes, which is shockingly long for an old slasher film. They're always 90 minutes or less. I just cannot believe somehow this one is just under 2 hours. And because of that, it's more reliant on characters, on character moments and relationships. And I just wasn't really sold on these characters. I didn't like them a lot. They're constantly bouncing back and forth on who's dating who, and they keep switching. It's like you're watching How I Met Your Mother or something. Very weird. So it makes it difficult to latch onto any character relationships and really like them. But despite the fact the kills are spectacular, it's very well made, and the finale really hits. At number 6, we've got Buried Alive from 1989. So this is very much a mashup of an 80s slasher and an Edgar Allan Poe gothic horror film. And I gotta say, it delivers pretty well as being a combination of those two things. It's about a woman who goes to work at a kind of psychiatric hospital / school for troubled girls. And she very much admires the headmaster there, who's played by Robert Vaughn, who's like the head psychiatrist of the place. But these girls keep going missing, and Robert Vaughn convinces her, hey, these girls, they just keep running away. We just can't keep them here. But we really know they're actually getting murdered one by one by a masked killer who's also walling them up behind brick walls that he puts up piece by piece. So it's very reminiscent of Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat because of that. And I just really like this movie. I was into the main character. I thought she was a very good, likable protagonist to follow through this. The kills are great in this film. Like, there's one that stands out to me where a girl is using like this archaic technology to like curl her hair that almost works like an electric mixer, but it just starts pulling and pulling at her hair until her entire scalp comes off, and it's pretty grisly. Another interesting thing about it is it was actually John Carradine's final movie, and he actually passed away on his way home after making this film. So rest in peace, John Carradine. He lived for a very long time. And Buried Alive is a pretty darn good hidden gem that I'm so glad Vinegar Syndrome put out, because that's what put it on my radar. Cracking into the top 5, we've got Curtains from 1983. Okay, the first thing I have to tell you about this movie is it is a mess. It very much feels like 3 different movies slapped together somehow. And when you learn about the making of this movie, you learn that's exactly what happened. Essentially, the director and the producer were very much at odds. The producer wanted a fun, goofy slasher, Friday the 13th, prom night kind of a movie. And the director wanted something much more serious, something for adults, something more artistic. And they fought until the producer just fired the director, then directed a bunch of it himself, and then hired a different director to come in and direct more stuff. And this is essentially just 90 minutes that they threw together from what they had. And the movie feels it. What the movie is essentially about is a director of a movie who is played by John Vernon, who you might know as the grumpy cop from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, who is very much trying to make this movie that he thinks is a very good script, but he's kind of riding the coattails of this very famous actress who he's in a relationship with. But he convinces the actress to go into an insane asylum to prepare for the film, but never lets her out so he can do this movie all on his own without her, and then invites a bunch of actresses out to a cabin to audition them, but really he is a total sleaze and wants to exploit them with the casting couch, essentially. So it's like a sleazy, gross movie that kind of makes you uncomfortable, but it also has these moments that feel pulled out of a different movie that's a more fun slasher film that don't feel like they really fit. So why am I even praising this movie? Well, I just think it's such an interesting experience to actually watch this. And the killer is great. The killer is wearing this like grandma old lady mask that's very unsettling looking. And the whole movie takes place out in the snow. And there's not a lot of snowy slashers, so that stands out to me. I really like to check out a snowy slasher film. And there's this one scene that stands out so much where they're on an ice rink and the killer is on skates, skating up, chasing this girl, and is going to kill her out in the cold of the snow. Like, that's just an all-timer slasher sequence. Look, if you're interested in the making of weird 80s horror movies, watch this movie, then watch the making of documentary on the Synapse Blu-ray, and you're gonna have a very interesting time. At number 4, we've got Eyes of a Stranger from 1981. So this is about a woman who's a TV newscaster who's reporting on a string of grisly murders that are happening to women in her city, and she just gets very emotionally caught up in it, very concerned, and wants to do something about this, and starts doing some private investigation on her creepy neighbor who she thinks might be the perpetrator. Now, the movie opens up with a spectacular kill scene where the guy breaks into this house of this couple, and the kill of the dude is like awesome because he literally decapitates him, drops his head in their fish tank, and it's awesome. But it's awesome and like fun because it's the killing of a guy. All the killing of women are much more uncomfortable because they're much more perverted. And I would say, even though this is definitely a slasher movie, it's more reminiscent of the giallo films that came out at this time, the Italian giallo films, because it's a much more psychosexual kind of a movie. It's about a private investigator trying to find the killer, much like giallos usually are. And the kill scenes almost feel more like out of Lucio Fulci's New York Ripper than they feel they're out of Friday the 13th because of that psychosexual aspect. And because of that, it's a sleazy, uncomfortable movie, but it's actually quite well made. It has very good performances. Jennifer Jason Leigh actually plays the younger sister of the main character, who is actually blind and deaf. So it's a very good performance, but also leads to some horrifically uncomfortable things that happen in this movie. So just kind of be warned about this one. But if you're a fan of giallo films, I definitely think you should check it out. I think it is a very tense experience. Definitely a good one. But at number 3 is actually an Italian movie, and that is Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare Beach from 1989. The way I describe this movie is it feels very much like an 80s spring break college comedy, but it just happens to also be a slasher movie and also have slasher kills in it. It very much makes exploitation use of the beach scene. You've got bikinis and shirtless dudes just everywhere, so there's something for everybody. The characters might be a little bit dull, but they're definitely fun, so I don't care at all. It's just enjoyable to spend time with and hang out in this movie. But the killer is also a biker-looking killer who actually does ride a motorcycle, much like in Night School that we just talked about. And there's actually some really fun kills in this movie. Like, there's one that stands out to me where the killer sets a girl down in front of a furnace. She's tied up, opens the furnace up, it blasts fire out at her, and you watch her melting until there's a skull underneath. It's pretty awesome. It's co-starring John Saxon, which is really fun, and it's one of those Italian movies that very much convinces you it is an American movie. It's actually a lot like Primal Rage, which I've spoken very highly of on this channel. I think they're from the same producer, but they've got some similar actors. There's one pop song that's featured prominently in both movies, but they're both like Italian movies. They very much seem like American movies that are fun and silly, and Nightmare Beach is just a great time. Highly recommend it for just tons of fun. And the runner-up on this list is Edge of the Axe from 1988. So this is about a rural community that is dealing with a string of grisly murders that are being done by this mysterious figure who wears a trench coat, an all-white mask with a just phenomenal look, by the way, and an axe. Our main characters are a couple of teenagers who are very much into computers and computer games and very much bond over that and have this budding romance, but are also trying to figure out what's going on with all these murders. Now, much like Nightmare Beach being a pretty convincing Italian movie as an American film, this is a Spanish movie. Now, the outside shots were actually filmed in California. Very beautiful setting, just gorgeous Pacific Northwest kind of a look, but all the interior scenes were all filmed in Spain. They mostly used American actors, so you can't really tell it's not an American film, but this is a great time. I've always really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed rewatching it leading up to this. The killer has an incredible look. I love this mask, the axe, and the kills are brutal. He is just wailing on people with his axe. The standout one has got to be at the beginning in a car wash. Where woman's going through a car wash, and as the soap and suds are fading from the windshield, you see this figure standing over the car ready to kill her. It's pretty epic. I like the characters, but when you get to the final reveal, I don't know that it totally works on who the killer turns out to be. I feel the filmmakers do cheat a little bit, because you learn in the making of about this movie that they had several different actors play the killer in different scenes to kind of throw you off on who the killer's going to be. But it feels like a bit of a cheat, because when you find out who the killer is, the shape and size of that character does not match what you've been watching in these kill scenes. So it does not feel like this is the same person. But all that aside, whatever. This is so much fun. Highly recommend Edge of the Axe on this Arrow Video Blu-ray. But at number one, I think is such an underrated gem, and that is Visiting Hours from 1982. So this is about a woman who's an outspoken TV journalist who is on a crusade condemning and trying to stop domestic violence against women, and her words on TV very much anger a creepy loner who starts murdering people, and most predominantly trying to murder her. So I have this movie on the Scream Factory double pack Blu-ray with Bad Dreams, but I gotta say Visiting Hours is the superior movie of the two. This is so great. Now this has got Michael Ironside as the killer. This isn't one of those mystery movies. You know Michael Ironside is the killer from the start, and he gives such a sweaty, creepy, unnerving performance as this monster who is on the hunt for this reporter. But one interesting thing is the movie kind of switches protagonists between like being about the reporter, but then also being about her nurse. And it's very much about all the stuff in the hospital of them trying to protect this reporter, this nurse trying to help her. And it's just got great characters, really good performances in it. It's an incredibly intense movie. And I love slasher films, but I love a lot of them because they're fun. A lot of them aren't particularly intense for me. This is one that very much accomplishes being a very intense experience. And it's also just got more on its mind in terms of social commentary, has a lot to say about domestic violence, of men as abusers, women as the victims of that. And it's just got a lot to say that I appreciate it. There's not a lot of slasher films that are trying to, well, say something. Visiting Hours is such a gem. And if you're a fan of Michael Ironside, it's an absolute must watch. He's so great in this movie. So that's a top 10 80s slasher movies you might not have seen. But if there's a movie you're really hoping to hear about in this video and you didn't, check out this video right over here. That's the first video that I did like this, and this is a follow-up to. If it's not on either list, let me know down in the comments below. I might just have to do a volume 3. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe, and don't forget to go out and enjoy yourself today. Have some fun, and I will see you next time.